we're going to get to Reef's favorite part of the show, labor. Reef loves it when we talk about labor, but there's a lot actually to talk about.
9 hours of it.
Well, there could be, because
8 pounds, 10 ounce baby Jesus.
Help me, Oprah Winfrey!
That guy.
I don't know what Oprah's going to do, but
so the first thing is that we've got Amazon drivers that are extending the picket lines to Atlanta. So we talked last week about how Amazon drivers in a couple of places were starting to now go on strike in California. So you've got Palmdale, like we said, and now they're extended to Atlanta as part of their unfair labor practice strike against Amazon. And why is that? Well, they've been on strike because they cut our contract early, because we've unionized with the Teamsters. Isn't that nice? Let me put that into this mode.
Yeah, it is. Reader mode.
Yeah, there we go. Nice. So we've been on strike for over a month now. They cut our contract early, right? So now at this point, we just need Amazon to recognize our union, negotiate, get our jobs back. Yeah, no big deal. I would very much like to see that happen. We all would. Because the minute Amazon starts negotiating with unions, be it the Teamsters, ALU, SEIU, any of them, the wave is going to start. That's what we need. To get that, we obviously need to disrupt our operations in other locations so they realize that the Teamsters mean business, we mean business, and it's time for them to pay up and respect their workers. Hell yeah, I love this kind of language. Amazon's delivery service is performed by subcontracted delivery service providers, right, third parties. While these DSPs are their own separate companies on paper, they have total control over how they're run and managed. So the Palmdale drivers are first to organize. The Teamsters launched a new Amazon division September of last year with the goal of organizing Amazon workers across the U.S. And as a matter of fact, we had that on one of the very first episodes of How Did We Miss That? We talked about the Teamsters. It was a World Socialist website article that was questioning whether it was a good thing that the Teamsters were trying to organize Amazon. And after what I just saw happen with UPS, I'm not so sure. But here we are. Amazon was the third largest package delivery company last year, delivering over 4 billion in packages in the U.S. alone. As the company continues to grow and expand its own delivery network, right? Amazon is seen increasingly important for organized labor, which it is. So for Teamsters labor movement as a whole, Amazon poses an existential threat to the rights and standards that our members have fought for and won over 100 years. Palmdale drivers will continue to strike and extend picket lines until Amazon reinstates the drivers and recognizes their contract. So that's a good thing. I read somewhere that they were looking at bringing in scabs and strike breakers. I hope that does not happen. We stand, of course, in solidarity with the workers and with the striking drivers. And so you can hook this up. This, again, was on fightbacknews.org. First time featuring them. Don't really know very much about them, but I thought this was a good article that I wanted to grab. I also wanted to talk a little bit about and do a postscript to the Teamsters and UPS and the vote that happened and the strike that wasn't. We did a Substack article on INN about it, indienewsnetwork.substack.com. Put in the clip in the segment that we did last week. But I also kind of wrote and summarized that was what was in all the articles for someone, so they don't have to claw through all of it and spend an hour and a half watching the whole thing. But so we knew that the locals are going to have a vote from August 3rd through August 22nd or so. So all the locals offices did have a vote, and all like the heads of the locals had to decide whether to recommend the TA or not to their members. So what happened there? Well, originally on July 25th, of course, we know that 340,000 UPS workers reached a tentative agreement on the 5-year labor contract. At least union leadership did. Then on Monday, Teamsters took the next step forward to ratify how their local union barns, including Teamsters Local 89 in Louisville, voted 161 to 1 to endorse the TA. Despite everything that we said, all the holes, all the problems, everything, almost all of them, every single one got on board, except for one, which I thought that was really interesting, right? So what happened? Local 89, which
They're not watching.
Well, pretty much they weren't watching, because one of the top 5 UPS barns, all right, which is based on combined ground and air membership, was the lone dissenting vote. Why? They didn't say, but the next day they retracted that and were like, no. We were objecting to something else, a procedural thing. We didn't actually mean to say to don't vote for the TA. No, not at all. And there's like the official statement, setting the record straight. They all got on board, 162 to 0. 162 to 0. This was not a vote against the contract itself, as some have speculated. From the day the tentative agreement was announced, they have recognized this as a remarkable achievement. They all got in line. They all are singing the praises of Sean O'Brien. Nobody's questioning what happened here. Forget about everything that we said. Forget about the fact that they didn't actually get the $25 an hour, or that the warehouses aren't getting air conditioning. Every single local got on board. Why? What happened? I don't really know.
They're going to go back to sleep.
But the union believed the new TA would allow UPS to remove MRAs. Like we said, on Monday, we hadn't gathered all the information. Local 89 now says with confidence that its members who receive MRAs will continue to receive it, and also receive the general wage increases negotiated in the tentative agreement. So if UPS were to reduce MRAs, it'd be a violation of the National Master Agreement. With these details confirmed, Local 89 now officially and proudly recommends a yes vote. So basically, they just needed clarification on one thing, but the part-timers, the warehouse drivers, this was not a big win, and it's kind of upsetting. So I want to read what Luigi Morris, who is one of those part-timers that I'm talking about, wrote this week in Left Voice with Ben Douglas, which is that we can fight for more, and asking them to vote no on the TA. So even though 162 local barns are recommending to vote yes, that doesn't mean that the rank and file are actually going to do it. Now, INN's Joe is works at the Air Hub in Philly, and
Meet Joe.
Yeah, that guy. He says that pretty much is a done deal at this point, which sucks. I'm heartbroken that these guys are getting not even a half measure. I would call it a quarter measure, because 5 years from now, this deal is going to be beyond awful. It's bad now. And they're screaming that it's the greatest deal in history. Right? So last week, 6 days before nearly 350,000 UPS workers were set to strike, the leadership of the IBT announced that they'd reached a TA with the company for a new 5-year contract. If UPS workers had gone on strike, they would have joined nearly 200,000 writers and actors currently on strike, fighting for their rights. Right? Workers will now read over the agreement and vote between August 3rd and 22nd to either ratify or reject it. The contract has been hailed as a historic win by union leaders and Democratic Party politicians, but in many respects, the contract falls far short of what workers deserve. Also, what the barns promised their membership, by the way. They promised, and they said $25 or we go strike. All right?
Which a lot of them aren't really getting.
None of them
even
are.
in this deal, right?
None of them, even after 5 years. He says, we are UPS workers. Luigi works as a part-time warehouse worker, and Ben is a former driver who's fighting to get his job back after being fired in retaliation for his union activism. We've been involved in strike preps, discussing with our coworkers, participating in union meetings, and flyering at our workplaces, sometimes as early as 3 a.m., while many part-timers clock in. We've been moved by the unprecedented support from students and other sectors of workers standing in solidarity with our demands, and by the practice pickets that gave the bosses a taste of our power. We are happy that people are finally talking about our terrible working conditions and the massive profits made from our labor. $8.6 billion in stock buybacks last year alone that could have gone to give these people more. As we continue to parse through all the details of the full tentative agreement and discuss with our coworkers, especially the most precarious among us, like warehouse drivers and helpers, it's clear that despite some important advances, this contract is far from historic and falls short on many counts, especially for the part-timers. There are 200,000 of the 340,000 are part-timers. The majority of the workforce is part-time, yet they're not really getting treated like they're the majority of the workforce. Right? So throughout the contract and strike campaign, our union has emphasized the need for us UPS workers to push back against the divisions of our classifications and fight with one fist. Just last week, Teamsters posted, right? Full-timers are standing up for part-timers because we are one union, no one gets left behind. It's time to make good on that promise.
Well,
Unite
we
our
heard that
ranks,
before.
right, and fight for a no child left behind, right? And so in that spirit, we urge our Teamsters siblings to vote no on this tentative agreement and use this unprecedented momentum to fight for a contract that truly leaves no one behind. Now, there have been some gains made, and he's conceding that for decades, UPS Teamsters have been subjected to concessionary contracts brokered by the old leadership of Jimmy Hoffa Jr., who cared more about playing nice with the bosses than delivering gains for the workers. Wages stagnated, UPS workers earned less money for the same work, conditions severely deteriorated inside the warehouses, and not only for the part-timers, but also for clerks, full-time helpers, and 22.4 drivers who were working terrible split shifts to avoid complete layoff. And we talked about that classification, which would be eliminated. So this contract campaign brought out important new energy into our ranks as we face the possibility of harnessing our power, not only to roll back previous concessions, but also to fight for more. Important demands were made to remove some of the worst contract language, the two-tier system among drivers, right? With forced overtime and layoffs, just to name a few, right? Sectors such as TDU, that's Teamsters for Democratic Union, they popularized the call for a $25 an hour wage for part-timers, which would meaningfully improve our lives. Right now, there's some of them, I think you're starting like $16.50. So, yeah, going to 21 is great. 23 after 5 years is good, but it's still not even enough to pay for like a two-bedroom apartment. The tentative agreement does make some important advances. And not only that, again, at 200,000 part-timers, all these employees have to have other jobs. This is like a moonlight economy, a gig economy.
Yep.
While UPS makes billions. They're basically, the workers are subsidizing UPS's profits. Tentative agreement does, like I said, make some advances, right? It would get rid of that 22.4 classification, eliminates the most egregious aspects of the two-tier system, get rid of the forced sixth punch where workers can be forced to come in on a sixth day and work overtime. Newly purchased trucks will have air conditioning, and MLK will be a paid holiday. So those are good. However, one of the biggest tensions is that far from uniting the workforce to fight against a part-time poverty, it would continue to keep part-time workers precarious, maintaining a vast wage gap between drivers and warehouse workers. The broadest form of the two-tier system would be maintained, even though they keep saying they eliminated it, which is drastically different pay and conditions between full-time drivers and part-time workers that load, unload, and sort. Right? So,
are there full-time workers in those positions?
Yes.
Like at all?
Yes.
I feel like, okay, there should be a rule about that.
Well, there are no rules on how many they have to have. And that was also part of it, was the number of part-timers that would be converted to full-time status. I mean, anything under 10,000 investors saw as a win, and they agreed to 7,500. But here's where during the first year of the proposed contract, part-timers would get $21 an hour, not the $25 minimum many have been fighting for. And additionally, the catch-up raises for workers with seniority would only amount to 50 cents for every 5 years of work. And these raises would be capped at $1.50 after 15 years. So you can only get $22.50. So part-timers who've been at UPS between 5 and 10 will go up to $21.50, which is just 50 cents more than a new hire. So
Why?
well, because
Why?
that's the two-tier wage system. But experienced drivers should still make a little bit more than their counterparts, more than 50 cents an hour more than new hires that are completely
The issue is that it's all part-time gigs, so there isn't any like experienced positions in that, right? Like,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, if a majority of it is new hires, then like, which they're doing deliberately so that they don't have to pay people.
Yep.
They're more than willing to have turnover.
Yes. And like more than 100% turnover. They're hiring and rehiring people back.
Right.
Yeah. In order to be able to meet this goal. We had a
which tells you the quality of work in the area anyway.
We had another chat that I missed over on the Rockfin from Roger Meadows from earlier.
Roger.
And he says when I was taking
$3 when I was
that's the one. Yeah, $2 to tip. When I was taking 3-hour trips upstate to Albany to witness people testify in front of the New York State Senate, was doing around the New York Healthcare Act, I remember that there were emails recovered by private health insurance with the executive boards or whoever in charge handed down these memos addressing those dying to drag it out in court until they die so we can just write it off. Oh, and then he's got another one. Yep, time to bypass.
Roger Meadows with another $2.
Ooh, okay, you can read that.
Time to
one.
bypass unions in the private sector and go straight to worker cooperatives. The truth is staring us right in the face when we just must have the courage to take that first step through that door, because this would be blazing a new trail. We are currently going with what we know, but I can't help but to feel that this is insane.
Right.
In the membrane, in fact, Roger Meadows.
Yeah.
And yes, cooperative is far better. I mean, the issue is that they're not even willing to fight for crumbs in their union, let alone understand or willing to fight for cooperatives.
Yeah.
So while I feel you, the education in that department is lacking, especially when our union leaders are more willing to just go do speaking gigs at Vogue and Gucci. So, take a trip to Cuba every once in a while.
We covered this last week.
I'm sorry.
But $49 an hour for drivers, for the top pay for drivers at the end of the contract, with starters just getting $23 an hour for part-timers. It's a big, all right. So for every improvement the bosses give drivers, we need to fight for the same for our union siblings working part-time. All right. So with billions of profits year after year, UPS has more than enough money to pay decent wages and benefits for all workers. Whether driver, preloader, all workers. We all break our backs and bodies every day to make record profits for our bosses. We are one union. Yep. Just mess. And then there's
driver, preloader,
shortcomings for drivers. This one, the personal vehicle drivers. This is what drove me crazy. The drivers are actually going to have to use their own cars.
Well, they're already doing that. Well, I mean, you think about there's an Amazon service that's similar too. They're trying to compete with things like Uber Eats and whatever. These companies that are willing to forfeit your car's operating ability for their benefit.
Yep.
So you're paying all overhead and you're taking every bit of damage to your car. The mileage just goes up while you get a stipend, barely anything. So.
And
it's essentially your payment is then derivative of how much you are willing to destroy your car, based off are you willing to do it in peak hours? Are you willing to do it? How much are you willing to do it? How many gigs can you complete? So
and the number is ridiculous. I
really,
was
you
watching a
suffer,
thing.
they win.
The guy
Right.
has to do like 155 deliveries in a 100-mile route in like 8 hours. It's ridiculous. Wow. But here you go. Only 28,000
scam is what it
package
is.
cars. About a third of the fleet are going to happen during the agreement's duration that they're going to get air conditioning. So more than 60,000 trucks.
A third of the fleet. A third. So you're telling me what's called a majority, 2/3, is will not be air conditioned. 2/3.
They'll get fans.
Only fans, I guess.
Yep.
Like, what? It's fucking 2023. What are we, the Amish and horse and buggies? Like, you got to put AC in a fucking giant metal box if you want your workers to stay there.
Benton preloads.
Good for you.
Look at that. UPS made over $100 billion in revenue just last year on the backs of our labor. CEO and board members have been paid millions. Their shareholders, the Vanguard Group and JP Morgan, are among the wealthiest and largest investment funds in the world, yet the company claims this is the best contract that we can get. They claim they can't provide part-timers.
Of course it's the Vanguard.
Yeah,
they all want you to just go.
And I live in a van down by the river.
Right.
No, I know, not those. I'm talking about Vanguard Group, as in the terrible Diet BlackRock.
That's them. Right. So UPS bosses want to keep making massive profits while fostering divisions between part-timers and drivers, making us fight over crumbs. For weeks and months in rallies and practice pickets and parking lot meetings, we all stood shoulder to shoulder, making it clear that we stand together. And then Sean O'Brien caved and it all disappeared. But here's our list of demands. AC systems in all cars and warehouses. No more PVDs. Longer breaks for part-timers. At least 4 hours of guaranteed daily work. They're not doing any of these things. And we're not alone in this struggle. Already from New York to Texas to Georgia, UPS workers across the country are beginning to organize that fight. Good. So this guy, one of these photos, I think it was this one, from this tweet.
We've seen these photos exactly, I think.
Yep. I used one of these last week.
I think
in one of our
brought
thumbnails.
these up last week.
Yep.
I think you used all 4 of them in the show.
It was from that tweet that he had that in. No,
right.
That was after our show, so I don't think so.
Huh?
No, it was the 30th.
No, it was definitely. 30th. I remember the X's.
Yep. Well, a lot more people are doing the X's.
At least 2 of them.
So, on top of that, there's our X's. We also had this, which is UPS drivers are sharing the thermometer reads from inside their trucks.
117. Yep. 117. And I want you to realize that's the back of the truck, right? The front of the truck might be worse. The back of the truck is where your loaders, your preloaders, your offloaders, like those, that's who are in there. Like, a goodbye chocolate, if that's what you ordered. Like, everything's melting in there.
Oh yeah, they're
that's
ovens.
Prolonged 117. You could like cook food at that temperature.
Basically, yeah.
Like,
that's why they put stuff in like dry ice. If you don't pack it in something like that, I mean, wow.
Like that next one. What is that next one? Surface temperature 1.
It's like 121.4
something.
It's 121.4. It's 121.4. But that's cut
Jesus
off there.
Christ.
Yeah. It says UPS CEOs would
I
never
say
accept
make those
working,
fuckers work in a 100-degree office.
Right. But they can't even turn the thermostats up that high. And the driver shouldn't have to either.
In Minecraft.
The other thing is, Mike over at Payday Report was talking about WGA and SAG-AFTRA. The studios and the writers were returning to the bargaining table. So that's not SAG-AFTRA. That's actually the Writers Guild. There's Jack Black on the picket lines. And apparently he's been doing like getting truck drivers to pull their horns. And everyone seems to love him on the picket lines. But after a 3-month pause, they returned to the table.
Jack Black.
Right. The studios.
This guy.
Shove it up your ugly ass.
No, wrong one.
You can kiss my ass.
No, I'll find it. It's somewhere. Keep going.
Okay.
Wrong guy.
Desperate for content for the fall TV schedule, some studio executives are now starting to push for a deal. Hey, how about that? The AMPTP, through Carol Lombardini, reached out to WGA and requested a meeting. That's good. We'll be back in communication. It's still being determined if these talks will result in a deal. They didn't. During the strike, studios have gone on a hire spree for AI specialists, with some making as much as $1 million a year. Bless you. Many union organizers worry that these studios are trying to beef up their AI capacity to put more stress and to put more pressure on the writers. But it certainly appears like these are high-level strategic positions based on the kind of compensation being offered in terms of a broader AI strategy or focus. That's not something we've seen prior to now. Yeah. So union leaders would say they're prepared to stay out for as long as it takes. I like hearing that. And we have financially prepared ourselves for the next 6 months. You have to do it in Fran Drescher's voice. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. And then you had Wabtec, which is one of the locomotive companies they sued. They're suing
I found
one
it,
of
by the way.
Up your ass.
That's there's your Jack Black thing. Just to remind people, Jamie Lee Curtis, not such a great response here, was asked about the strikes.
Say that I hope that both
disappointed.
sides see the value of continuing conversation. The issues are real, and my hope is that no one will be happy with a settlement, but we will get back to work. And that's just the nature of a settlement, is both sides aren't happy. So we're all going to have to give up something to get something, and I hope that what we get to do ultimately is continue our work. And I'm hoping.
Yeah, except AI rights and like
my disappointment is immeasurable,
dude.
and my day is ruined.
Just to remind people, Disney won't give up 0.91% of their revenue to stop the strikes. Netflix 0.091%. Netflix 0.214%. Warner Brothers 0.108% of their revenue to stop the strikes, and Paramount won't give up 0.148% of their revenue to stop the strikes. Solidarity with the
Correct
writers.
me if I'm wrong. Didn't Jamie Lee Curtis switch over to the directing side of things?
Maybe.
Wondering.
Quite possibly.
I feel like she might have done a couple.
Yellow Freight, man. So we talked about Yellow Freight. We talked about Teamsters and Yellow. Yellow declared bankruptcy. They laid off 30,000 people. And what had happened was the mayor, and this is only a 35-second segment from one of the local news channels in New York.
In your business news now, Yellow Freight in Maybrook is closing its doors amid financial problems for the Tennessee-based company and reports of bankruptcy.
That was happening.
Maybrook Mayor Dennis Leahy tells News 12 the company did not notify the village of their plans to close the Orange County location, but confirms it's no longer in operation. Leahy says it's unfortunate the company fell to financial difficulties.
Julian?
Yellow is one of the largest trucking operations in the U.S. Its closure has resulted in a reported 30,000 layoffs nationwide.
Yeah. Thanks for that, guys. And if you read a little bit more into it, they were given no notice. But on top of that, our employment and training office could have gone to Yellow Freight and sat down with all the employees to get their information and start plugging them into other employers. They left their employees out to dry. Even if they knew this was happening, they could have been working with people from the state to help to help place these people into other jobs.
Yeah, said Bauhaus.
Instead, now Newhouse. Instead, now you have to go to orangecountygovernment.com, which
Newhouse sounds like a Bauhaus fucking cover band. Anyway, I'll just be by myself over here.
The only other one, and I wanted to call attention to this, was that in LA, and Labor Notes had this one, that hotel workers in LA were on strike. And I know that there was some pressure about Taylor Swift canceling her concerts in New York, in LA, which I think she was making $60 million or something. And then she gave like $55 million away to her whole staff. Just basically, I think they shut everybody up. But on top of the fact that that's a really nice thing to do for the people that are making you a ton of money. But
in Huelga.
Yes, you've got Laguna Cliffs Marriott workers in Dana Point, California. All right. They were retaliated against by InstaWork. So this was like another one. Laguna Cliffs. I actually stayed there like 15 years ago.
Speaking of
another
Roger Meadows with another $2 chip. News 12, our local news station out here in Long Island.
Yes, that's the same. That's the same one.
Long Island.
Long Island.
Yeah,
that's them. But that's the Westchester division.
Islands.
Yes, I'm in Jersey.
Yep.
Roger. But so when Thomas Bradley showed up for his third shift, he encountered a picket line. Here, the picket was part of a wave of strikes at LA area hotels by members of Unite Here Local 11 at 62 hotels, which expired their contract on June 30th. Right there, hotel workers' top demand is for pay that will allow them to secure housing in a market that is pricing them out. That seems reasonable.
Yep.
So he stopped to talk to the picketing workers and then joined them, exercising his right to strike. But there was a problem. He had been hired by the hotel through a temporary staffing app called InstaWork, and they didn't have the mechanism to recognize that he was on strike. So it canceled his shifts not only at Laguna Cliffs, but also at other venues that weren't on strike. He appealed, but the app mechanically rejected his appeal. The union has identified
Is there an app for that?
6 hotels are using InstaWork to hire scabs. Yes,
of course they are.
Right?
Can the grinder union go take care of them?
Right. So
what?
Bradley is black, as are several other workers at the hotel hired during the strike during using InstaWork. To use a platform like that as to use as pawns, I think that was kind of messed up. Yep. Striking workers are largely Latino. Were also appalled once they learned about the app from Bradley. Their union has spent decades trying to get hotels to hire more black workers. Yep.
Bradley, why did your parents give you the whitest name? Like it's Bradley. Like, you know what I mean?
Shout out to Snow Himbo if he's in chat.
Yeah, I mean it's Brad. It's Bradley, Bradlington the third.
Well, there are.
I don't know.
Well, Bradley Beal is a pretty famous basketball player that has. He's not white.
Sure.
But anyway, we have open positions in housekeeping, and they could have hired them permanently. Here, this guy, striking housekeeper Andrea Rodriguez, summed up the situation. This company brought in African American workers to break our strike, but once we came back in, they let them go. We have open positions in housekeeping, and they could have hired them permanently, but they didn't. We didn't think that was fair. Terrible. So he's good enough to break the strike, but not good enough for them to have health care, pension, and for a sustainable job for himself and his loved ones. Gross. Yep. He's been trying to get a permanent hotel job for more than a decade and suggested discrimination was the reason that he was passed over.
Yeah. They go, this Bradley's white. We didn't expect that.
They read the name on his resume.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm terrible.
Yes, that's
yeah. Yeah, go Chase or like Skylar. We could throw Skylar in there for white names.
LOL, Bradleyton Rathbone
Chad
III, Esquire. Yes. That's right, Bad Cookies. Very funny.
Yeah.
Very funny.
I'm sorry. I'll see myself out. I'm sorry.
Yeah. InstaWork got Insta-worse. It's had so many updates that it's turned into a traditional job. The app now gives businesses more of an upper hand. They can get rid of us anytime, no questions asked. They use a rating system. I'm reading over here, but unlike Uber, in the case of InstaWork, it's the bosses rating you. Higher ratings give you access to more shifts and even pay premiums if you reach the highest level. Oh my God, the worst game ever. Insta work.
I mean, I thought that was like
no, it's
the ultimate game. You know,
not exactly. Not here.
It's where we hunt humans on an island.
Right.
You know?
So you've got housing catastrophes, of course, going on because they can't get consistent work, make their bills. All right. The jobs he was getting were so far away from where he lived that he was never at his apartment. He was traveling as far away as San Diego from LA. Housing costs have risen in LA. His housing situation is becoming more common, even for union hotel workers. Right. 1 in 10 had experienced homelessness. Rodriguez said her family of 5 lives in a small two-bedroom apartment that costs $2,300 a month. That's cheap. It's too expensive. We can't make ends meet. My husband's a gardener, and it's not enough. Like, they're literally just pricing people right out of being able to live and exist.
Yep. Well,
right.
You know,
the money is there.
Yeah, thanks.
If we can save the banks, then we can save the world.
No, that's not. The script was written wrong. I think you read that wrong, Greta. That can't be right. Housing prices are forcing workers to use apartments in shifts or cram into the garages of family or friends or move far inland to more affordable desert towns like Lancaster or Victorville, which is a 2-hour drive each way. Commute is so long and expensive that some end up sleeping in their cars during the week, only seeing their families at homes on days off. I had a friend that did that.
2 hours later.
Did that 10 years ago. Like, literally, he would sleep in his car all week long and then drive home for the weekend. And it's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Like, we don't need to do this. We don't need to live like this. Right? The union wants an immediate $5 an hour wage hike and an additional $3 in each subsequent year of the contract. Yes. The hotel's counteroffer is less than half that. What a surprise. Right? So, meanwhile, the Westin Bonaventure in LA with 600 workers, they settled before the contract expired. Solidarity again. Everybody is getting squeezed. Yeah. The workers are saying, I cannot work for this. No more. Third wave of strikes cresting here. Labor notes. Go follow those guys as well.
Jenny Brown.
If
you want to contact Jenny, her number is available at 867-5309. Jenny, I've got your number.
Everybody always wondered what her last name was. I guess now we know.
Jenny Brown.
Yeah.